Hello and welcome to another episode of Art Discourse. Today I'm so happy to have Dr. Deborah Ryszka from Germany here with me to discuss one of my favorite, if not the favorite, form or school of art, that is German Romanticism. Welcome, Frau Deborah.
Hello, and thank you. I'm very lucky to be here with you and to talk about Romanticism.
Fantastic. So, Deborah, perhaps to begin our conversation, I think we should define our terms. Ayn Rand, she was a big advocate of Romanticism. Now, is that the same Romanticism that we are talking about here? Are there some differences? I know the contemporary definitions of Romanticism disagree with Rand. Perhaps we should start with Rand's definition. Would you like to kick us out with that?
Maybe I start with the common definition, if you have nothing against it, because that's the most popular, that most people know. And it just says that sentiments and emotions are very important to express, because you have to say that Romanticism was an answer to the Enlightenment, where rationality was very important, and people didn't like it somehow, and they said they wanted to contrast this rationality, wanted to contrast the classic, the antique, and they wanted to do their own thing. They wanted to enhance, they wanted to express their own culture. Therefore, nationality was politically very important then. And on the psychological level, the ego is very important. And there, the feelings, how I feel, how I sense certain things. On the other side, Red said we have to have another look at it. And as you know, Rand, rationality was very important for her. So she said we have to look at, from a rational point of view, on Romanticism and less on the emotionality. And that is important, what, for example, romanticistic literature tells us about rationality, because when you know Ayn Rand, you know emotions and rationality aren't two separate, different things, but they're one unique. They make a whole. They intertwine together, and therefore she is convinced that the Romanticists, as we, have a wrong point of view on Romanticism, because we focus on emotions. Instead, we have to take a look at the rationality, at the value systems which are transported through the literature, through the art.
Mm-hmm. So you would agree that the conventional definition is wrong by identifying the emotion as the genus, the thing that unites all romantic art together, or you agree with Rand?
I wouldn't say that. I would just say first we have, if we want to understand Romanticism, we have to have a look how those people define themselves, how they characteristic themselves. And if they say emotions and sentiments were on the top of our understanding, we have primarily to look from that point of view. That doesn't mean we can have another perspective on the themes, as Ayn Rand stated, from a rational point of view. It is also very important, I think, but we can't forget how Romanticists define themselves, and from their point of view, from their historical political conditions, we have to understand why they did this. And then, if we know this, we can switch our perspective on the rational point of view and have a look what values, what it shows us or tells us about human values, what values have for consequences, etc. This shows very good literature. Goethe with Werther, what happens, or it's in the whole Romanticism, because love is so important to them. What happens if you don't have any values, or you have just the value of passion, of your desire on the top, and to what consequences it leads human.
So if I understand you correctly, there are two different ways we should approach this. First, there's a historical perspective, trying to really understand what the actual artists, such as Goethe, were thinking about, or what they were doing, what they viewed as most important, whether it was emotions or rationality or something else. And Rand's view is a bit different, where it's not a historical commentary, rather her own definition of what is the ideal form of art. Is that the right way to differentiate between the two?
Absolutely.
So we can say, for our discussion purpose, we can say we're talking about 18th, 19th century Romanticism, and when we talk about what Rand said, is romantic realism, which is the way she defined it. So these are two separate things, but they do have overlapping themes. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And as I said, for example, if we have a look at Goethe's Werther, it's you see a person or two persons who are full of passion, and you can now have a look at it from an emotional point of view, as romanticists wanted it to be. They wanted that you live your emotions full out, as the characters shows, and even as a reader, that you can feel how this emotion maybe come out by yourself. It was very important to feel these emotions. But now, from Rand's perspective, we would have a closer look at what values does Werther stand, for example. And there we can say, I wouldn't say it's really love. He falls in love. It's more kind of passion. These are his drives. He was very young and naive. So, it was his first love. So we can wholly understand this whole situation that came up. But from a value perspective, love or his drives were the highest values. And in how did it end? It ended in a catastrophe, because he committed suicide. And now we could discuss, was it rational to commit suicide? What kind of values? Were there other values that stand for him? Or was it just the drive? Was it just the drive for lust he fell for?
Mm-hmm. And specifically Werther, I think, we should mention that the full name is The Sorrows of Young Werther, which I think is a novel that everybody should read. Probably it's defined among many art historians, as the most foundationally romantic novel.
Sorry, it's not really a romantic novel. It's one of the first novels by Goethe, and it is the novel that made him popular, not only in Germany, but European wide. And if you have a look, it's Goethe lived in the time at the beginning of Sturm und Drang. It is called
which is essentially a precursor movement to Romanticism. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And Goethe's Jungen des Leiden Werthern is a key novel of Sturm und Drang. Mm-hmm. Other than, for example, Faust, you can say this is clearly a novel from the Romantic time. But with Leiden des Jungen Werthers, it is really Sturm und Drang.
It is, but in a sense, it is what followed that was the Romantic movement, and this, and perhaps wrongly, people interpreted this as the supremacy of emotion over rationality. For example, in the characters we have Werther, who is a man who's completely, the hero, is completely overcome by emotions. He's everything, like he acts according to emotions. He's regarding the material world, he's disconnected, he's disinterested, he's not working. He doesn't try to get over his impossible love for Lotta, which is the struggle of the conflict of Lucas. Werther wants Lotta, but Lotta is married to Albert, or engaged. I think she was engaged.
Heine, she said something like as in German, beinahe verlobt, so as good as engaged.
Yeah, so she's already going to marry this man who is Albert, who is a man of rationality. He's a businessman. He's all about this world, and Werther is about going to nature and enjoying the beauty and being overwhelmed by the beauty of nature and yearning for Lotta. So we have two, and in a sense it's interesting to compare it to Rand, because the characters that Goethe here uses are also abstractions. Werther is completely an abstraction for emotionality, and Albert is an abstraction for rationality, even though it's not a perfect, ideal rational man. So in this novel, it shows how Werther essentially loses his mind basically until the tragic end where he commits suicide. Sorry, spoiler alert. Everybody knows it. Yeah. So this was a defining piece in Romantic literature because of that emphasis on emotion and also the nature aspect. Perhaps we can talk a bit. Why does Romantics are so obsessed with nature and going out, and essentially that is going away from the city life, a bit like monks? We can think of Caspar David Friedrich, who loves the monk in his paintings. What is it that Romantics have with this theme of returning to nature?
Mm. Nature is very important for them because it is the opposite of the city. It is the opposite of responsibility. It is the beginning of something. For example, you have Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who said, "Zurück zur Natur." We have to go back to the nature, because people. Maybe it has something to do with the meaning of life. You have to find a meaning of life, and if you aren't capable of finding it, you're looking for some kind of orientation. And people think, the sentence, in the past it was always better. And they try to flee from reality somehow. Nature gives us, or gives humans, the opportunity to flee from reality, to think that they are in a certain kind of state. That is one answer, I would say. The other is maybe, if you have a look at nature, it's so beautiful. The nature itself, the mountains, the sea. If you have a look at this, it has something sublime in it. In some moments, in some situations, you don't have the words to describe what you see there or what kind of sense it brings to you. And I would say it's some kind of handling with the reality, because if you have a look at reality, reality is suffering. Reality means pain. You have to struggle all the way, and you need something to orient, something that makes life worth to live for it. And therefore, I think art was created, because we have to somehow express us. We have to somehow handle this suffering, this pain, and we want to show there is something better in the world. For example, I really like the poem by Goethe, Das Göttliche. I'll have a look at it. I'll open it. Should I read it?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So,
Should first read the German for us to experience the beauty, and then the English.
I'd like to do this. One moment. So I'll start. Das Göttliche. Edel sei der Mensch, hilfreich und gut, denn das allein unterscheidet ihn von allen Wesen, die wir kennen. Heil den unbekannten, höheren Wesen, die wir ahnen. Ihnen gleiche der Mensch, sein Beispiel lehr uns, jene glauben. And it says something like this in the first part, that humans should be high-minded, should help others, should be good in nature, because that's what distinguishes us human beings from animals, from flowers, and so on. And in the second part, he then says we have to look at something sublime, something that is higher than us. We can't really explain it, what it is, but we feel it inside, that there is something. We should try to be the best version of ourselves. We should try to be this sublime, to give some sublime to the world and to the living.
That's beautiful, and this is really an idealistic movement, and I can see how it comes against, as a matter of fact, it did come against the Enlightenment, where it was viewed as kind of, devoid of this element, devoid of this spiritual element. They see the emphasis on rationality as the antithesis, which is an error, a philosophical error, but they saw that as the antithesis to being, to having this ideal, this notion of something to aspire to. And I could see Howard Roark, for example. He also aspired for a sublime. He had his vision, he had his buildings that he wanted to build. So in that sense, he was a very spiritualistic person. He wasn't just interested in the material gain, but in the spiritual realm. So in that sense, I see a very interesting parallel between romantic 19th, 18th century romantic heroes and Howard Roark.
And if I could say, it's very interesting, and I think it's very important to understand this time, because I also wrote it in my PhD. I think we can see much parallels between the Romanticism then and now, because nowadays our society focuses very much on rationality, but it's not really a rationality. Most people don't understand it. The problem is that our society focuses on economic rationality. It means when you're a scientist, it doesn't matter what the quality of your writing is, the quality of your studies, only the quantity, how many studies you make, how much you write, but that's absolutely has nothing to do with quality or with rationality in it. But many people understand it wrong and think rationality means economically rationality. And it's quite interesting because this was already thematized by intellectuals in the 1970s, the Frankfurter Schule, Marcuse, Ardona, etc., etc. At that time, intellectuals were left, and intellectuals had some deep thoughts at that time, different than nowadays. But it was really. They were right with their analysis from my point of view. And as I said, nowadays people mistake rationality for economical rationality. And what do? They also have a sense for community. They have a sense for meaning, and therefore, I that's my opinion. The climate movement came about. Why? It is all about nature. They are like obsessed with nature. What they want to save the nature. Why? Because they maybe why? I don't know. It's too complex to answer this question. But I think it's the same problem, or it's the same phenomenon we see during Romanticism. Then it politically showed up as nationalism. nowadays it shows up as a climate movement or the strive to have a united world, etc., etc. Why? Because we also have as then an ego cult. Everybody talks about oneself. Everybody wants to show oneself. Just have a look at social media. The people just show themselves. They show photos from themselves, show their thoughts. Oftentimes you think, who wants to see that, or who wants to hear what those people have to do? But obviously there are people who find it some kind interesting. So we have many parallels. During Romanticism and nowadays.
It's very interesting analysis. I would say, just so we're not confusing the ego with Rand's conception of the ego, but sort of a narcissistic view of oneself. Now, interesting link to environmentalism I've also seen when I was a few weeks ago in Hamburg in the anniversary exhibition for Caspar David Friedrich, that they had an amazing exhibition, a ton of amazing paintings by Friedrich, but at the upper level, when they have the modern section, they have a lot of things to say about environmentalism, and they show the icebergs, and this, and they just love to slap to Friedrich the label of he was an environmentalist, and I think that's just it's first of all it's disrespectful to the person that you're here. You're setting up this exhibition, showing his amazing art. What do you know if he would have agreed with you on this or not? Like, what kind of, I think it's deplorable when they show it in that light. But nevertheless, they see this connection. They see he painted beautiful nature. It means he was for the environment. We are also for the environment, apparently. So, yes, I see that, unfortunately, this link between Romanticism and environmentalism, which I think is very damaging, because people who want to experience great art, they should just experience great art. They don't need to add all these nonsense.
That's the problem. All is politicized in the Western countries. All is seen from a political point of view. If you do research, if you do some kind of art, always comes this politicization, and it's very dangerous, I think. And we see the consequences of this politicalization. You know what I mean? It brings people not together, but brings them, splits them up in some kind of parts.
Yeah, into camps and different tribes, and that's the opposite, really, of a romantic man. Someone like Werther does not belong to any class. He does not belong to any tribe. He's just a man who is out there in nature. He has values. He loves Lotta. Not sure why he loves Lotta, but he just loves her, and that's what he's doing. So he's not a collectivist in that sense. He's a very individualistic character. So in that sense, it's opposed to what these people who attach political aspects to these forms of great art.
If I may, in that kind, Heinrich Heine is also very an important figure. I would say that he was, when you have a look at his life, he was even more an individualistic than Goethe. Some words to him. He was born in Düsseldorf as a Jew. His family, his family wasn't, I think, very wealthy, and his parents wanted him to make to be a merchandise. So he went to his uncle in Hamburg, made the whole stuff. But he was very unlucky. He wanted to do something with arts. Then he studied somehow laws, and he wasn't really accepted in Germany because he was a Jew. So he baptized after he did his degree in law, from Judaism to Christianity, because he thought he would find a job as a lawyer. unfortunately, it wasn't the case, and because the political situation in Germany became very tight. It was tough to say your free decision, to have free speech. His work was censored by the national German government. So he fled to France, to Paris, and lived there until his death. And he always said he felt like an outsider in Germany, but he wanted to be an outsider. Why? Because he wanted to be an individualist. He wanted to be responsible for himself. He wanted to be solidary with himself, to stand up for his own values, to live his life as he wants it to be. And you can see it very, very good, I think, in his works, this kind of individuality, because many German don't understand him. He even polarizes nowadays with his work, because you can't really say if it's Romanticism, if it's an essay he maybe wrote, it's a poem he wrote. He crossed the borders, and it's very hard for some people to understand this and to find something in that. But you can see it in some poems. Maybe I can, if you have nothing against it. Das Fräulein stand am Meere.
I want to have these poems, absolutely. First in German.
Okay. Das Fräulein stand am Meere und seufzte lang und bang. Es rührte sie so sehr der Sonnenuntergang. Mein Fräulein, seien Sie munter. Das ist ein altes Stück. Hier vorne geht sie unter und kehrt von hinten zurück. And why it is so important? Because it's so beautiful how you can see his individual point of view, because he tries to get together two opposite things. On the one side, the romanticism, and on the other side, the reality, or you can name it rationality. I don't know why, because I just try to translate the first part. It says something like that a young maid was standing at the sea, and she was so sad that the sun went down. In the second part, some person comes, we don't know who, and he says, fair lady, don't be sad. This is an old theme. The sun goes here down, but she comes on the back again up. And it is so funny here from my point of view, because she romanticizes. Yeah, she sees something in the end of the day that isn't really there, or it's only in her fantasy. And with the second part, a person wants to show her, no, everything is all right. Yeah, the day comes tomorrow, and everything will be fine. And you can see the self-humor of Heinrich Heine here, because he was also one person who wanted to overcome Romanticism and wanted to make fun of Romanticism. As I think Goethe said, Romanticism is a sickness. We have to be cured somehow of that. And I think Heine was knew about it and wanted to show it with this irony that he isn't really serious about Romanticism.
So he didn't want to end up like Werther. That's essentially
right.
So another interesting. Thank you for reading these poems. It's very beautiful, and it's so rare for people in this world of I would say fans of Ayn Rand to talk about this form of art, this really special era, I think, in art that should be appreciated more. Hopefully, this video should help you be more encouraged to go and explore it. There's one other theme in Romanticism that I think is interesting, and that is the yearning for the impossible, the chase after an impossible love, for example, as we see in Werther. Another good example, and which I think is an interesting parallel to Werther is Cyrano de Bergerac, who also he wants Roxane, but it's impossible. So and they're both intensely emotional people, and they're both very individualistic. I would prefer Cyrano. I think he's more of a impressive human being, but still, I think it's an interesting theme. What do you think about that?
I think they look at the impossible because it is something that gives us the most, that gives us the most feelings. Everybody knows that if you can't get something, it is full of emotions, because your rationality and your emotions are fighting somehow against each other. And I think, but they are only fighting against each other if you're having a look like Ayn Rand, I would say, at the whole thing. Because if you have values, many people don't have values, and they don't mind. For example, if they can't get something, they're just doing it. They want to get to their aim. So I think we have to take a deeper look and say how values are important on that. And we just can have these emotions, this impossible feeling, if we set up values. Without values, you can't understand this. Maybe as you said, that brings me to the point, because you said many people don't understand Romanticism. Maybe it's because nowadays we have some kind of nihilism. Yeah, and the postmodern times, anything goes, and so everything is all right. Yeah, there is no difference between the good and the evil. There's no difference between the beautiful and the not so beautiful. And so because people don't have those values, they can't really appreciate those works like a Werther, like a Faust, or even those poems, because you just can have these feelings if you have values. And why people strive for it, I'd say because you feel sad. I wouldn't say that people want something impossible. That's not. I haven't read Werther, Faust, and everything like that. I would just say that's life. It's an old plot that happens all the time. Someone falls in love with someone, even though this person is in a relationship. This is something very natural. So it is something everybody can somehow connect it, because everybody experienced it by itself, or saw it at friends and family, or had even read Die Leiden des jungen Werthers, if I can show it. But the problem is people don't learn about it. They always make the same mistake, and therefore I would say, yeah, we should have a look at more rationally at these works, as Rand wanted to it, because then we would better understand what consequences the action of the people have, how it did come to this.
Mm-hmm. And I think one point that this raises is, you mentioned that people don't understand it, and I think it's similar to the way people don't understand Rand. A lot of people, they are very aggressively hating on Atlas Shrugged, on the Fountainhead. They say the characters are flat, they don't change, they are too idealistic, and I think in a sense they hate it because of the values. They hate, as we said, we are in a to a large extent in a nihilistic society. Therefore, art that projects great values is a danger to nihilism, because nihilism is the rejection of values. It's saying that values are impossible, and therefore even we have to destroy them. So they are against Werther. They are against these great romantics, because they show them that something else is possible. You can have values, and they don't want to change. So they hate it, and they say it's terrible, same as they do with Rand.
But why do they hate it? And I would say they hate it because you have to be a strong personality to set your own values and live your life after the values. Because, as Werther shows very good, you have this situation, this love situation. Werther wants to be with Lotte, but Lotte is engaged. So it is not possible. It's not possible for them to be together with their values they have, and you have to be very strong, not to follow your desires, not to follow your passion. And I would say many people are either too weak or don't want to be rational because they just want what they want at the moment, and they don't understand or they don't see how important it is to act for your values and not for your emotional state. So if you just want something now, it's you can't do this because the consequences in the end are bad. And this shows Die Leiden des jungen Werthers very good, because in the end he commits suicide, and it's a tragedy not only for himself, but you have to think, why did he commit suicide? He also Lotte's he didn't think at Lotte, who we don't know because it ends with his suicide, but we can think she suffers now a lot of pain because she also loved him, and he did commit suicide. Even in her house, she also found him, and so it shows what happens when people are not rational, don't have values, and don't think about the consequences. And as Goethe said in Das Göttliche, we have the capacity to anticipate our consequences, but many people don't want to do this. And I think when we look at the sociological level, it has something to do with free will. Do you think in free will or not? Do you think human has volition or not? And if you say human has, nowadays, unfortunately, many people, I would say, think we don't have volition. Why? Because this point of view comes from the politically left and green. As you see Marx, as you see in Sigmund Freud, they say we don't have volition. Everything is determined. This has something to do with the nihilism, with the postmodern age, but I think that is really bad for us, because we have free will, we have volition, and even now in these days we have to set values. We have, even if we can't argue if we have free will, we have to think normative on that kind of way, that we have free will. Why? Because if we think we have volition, then we will set up values. We will take responsibility for our actions, and that will make our lives and the whole world much better than it is without thinking we have volition.
That is so important that you mentioned that, and I think that is probably the reason why intellectuals, they choose to define Romanticism as emotionalism and not as the school that shows the primacy of values or of free will, because they want to make it more superficial so that it won't penetrate people and show them through the power of great art that it is possible to be great. You can aspire for ideals. You can change yourself. You are a free agent in this world. So it's much better for these intellectuals to say, no, Werther was just an emotionalist. He just followed his emotions, and that's what happens. And they have this false dichotomy of emotion versus rationality. So that's a win-win for them to just say Romanticism is just an emotional movement.
And as and the problem is that nowadays it is some kind of so suppressed. You can see it in this whole left and green movements, they say there is nothing like beauty. For sure, there is something like beauty. You even have some objective criteria what's beauty, what beauty is, because why do we think that some paintings, some literature are beautiful, and not we just say it, but even our fathers and grandfathers were saw this like us, and this shows there are some objective criteria for this, but somehow in society they want to convince us that there aren't those values like beauty or like honesty, like volition. This could be also a value.
And to counter the Enlightenment point as well, this was Goethe really anti-enlightenment? Because he was a person, one of the greatest geniuses I think in history, a person who was both an artist, a scientist, a politician. He did so many things. He was definitely a very rational person. He must have been, in order to achieve all of these things. Then can people really say that he was anti-enlightenment?
I wouldn't say that he was really anti-enlightenment, because as I said already, I cited him, Romanticism is a sickness. I'd say he wasn't. He was a child of his time, and he just saw that the focus on rationality was. I'll start with this. We are human. Rationality and emotions are very important for us. We can't be just only rational or just only emotional. We have to put up with with them both. And I would say Goethe knew of this, but during his time, all the people were talking about was rationality, rationality, rationality. Even if you have a look at his life, he was forced to do many things he didn't want to, and he couldn't really live his emotions out, at least in the beginning when he was younger. Later, I have to say, as you said, he's a genius. Yeah, he was so had so many talents, but as a human being, I don't know if he was really, really such a good guy, because he was very lust-driven. You know, when he was very old, I don't know, 70, 80, I don't know, then he fell in love with a 16-year-old girl. My God, and he wanted to marry her. Yeah, so. Wow. If you're rational, you know, oh my God, this I can't even think about that. But he didn't thought so. For example, it was really funny because when a theater or a poem or something from him, he wasn't quite happy with the critic he got from a journalist. And what did he do? He went to the boss of this journalist and said, "Hey, you have to fire him because he didn't write a good critique about my work, and so I want you to kick him out." So he wasn't really a nice man, I would say. Maybe a little bit Trump-like. I don't know. Yeah, but anyway. Although I think he was conscious about we have to take rationality and emotionality, have a look at those, and because as I said, he was a child of his time, of the Enlightenment. He wanted to say, "Hello, guys, we have to have a look at the emotions, at the sentiments, and therefore I think it's important to pronounce it, to have." To have here a more specific look.
And going back to Werther, there's one of the theme of the Romanticism that I want to explore, and that is the issue of class. I don't think it has to do with socialism, but perhaps you can help me. But Werther had a problem with the aristocratic people. He had a problem with the bourgeois. And he actually preferred the simple people, the people of the lower classes. Does that have political implications? Or is just a matter of taste? It doesn't like the values of the aristocratic people. More generally, there is a theme in Romanticism of the struggle of a person against the class system or against society as a whole. So what do you think about that?
I'd say it's the point of view of an intellectual, because if you define yourself as an intellectual, you have to be social, but not in a socialist kind of way, but in a rational social way. So you want that everybody has the chances, the opportunities to have the best life the person wants. And during that time, the society, there were a lot of poor people. The standard of living wasn't as high as nowadays, so people really had to suffer. They died at a young age. They hadn't those individual freedoms as we have nowadays. So I'd say it's quite an intellectual point of view he took there. And you, if we are honest, you always have to say those people who have power mostly don't have values. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in that position they are. Because to get power, you know Machiavelli, Il Principe. Yeah, you have to do almost everything to get to your destination. And so you can say, yeah, those people don't really have values, and therefore it's really nice. For example, I would recommend it to read Emil Durkheim's French sociologist. I don't know the name of this work, but there's a work where he described the French high society during Louis XIV or something like that. And he described that people who had values and came into this whole life, it was disastrous for them because there weren't any values. They lied to each other. They intrigued each other. There was no respect. There was no trust to each other. And so, yeah, it just comes with power. Power mostly, of course, not all the people who have power are that way, but in most of the cases, to strive for power, to achieve power, you can't have any values. And that's, I would say, why Goethe and even Heine criticized that. Just one thing, Heine saw it very early. It was very interesting. When he was 16, I said already he had to go to his uncle in Hamburg to get a merchant, a tradesman. And he said it was the school of his life there, because he had contact with the high society people. And he said, they are so inhuman. They think they are better than the other people. They are so arrogant, and they don't really have values like honesty, like kindness. And he didn't feel very well there. And therefore, it's just, it's you can say some kind of human law. You have to accept this. Of course, it doesn't suit for everybody in these classes, but unfortunately, many are so and think so.
Mm-hmm. So also worth mentioning that this is before the Industrial Revolution, essentially. So these concepts of socialism and class struggle were less relevant then. Okay. Do you want to talk a bit about Schiller?
Try.
So, in my previous interview...
About die Räuber?
Perhaps, yes, we can talk about that. In my previous interview, I had a very interesting lady called Anna Cicola, who's a theater director. And she does plays, and I asked her what are some good examples of great romantic plays, and she mentioned Schiller. So how do you compare, we can go to the example you mentioned, how does that sit in line with the same works as Werther? It has the same ideas. Perhaps you can take us a bit into that world.
Seine Räuber is also a novel in Romanticism, because it is full of these emotions, but love isn't the central theme, but more this adventurous thing. So you can see, you can get the same emotions, the same sentiments, the romanticizing, not only with love, but also with adventurous things. I think Ayn Rand even said that Edgar Allan Poe could be some kind of romanticist because he has these crime stories which are very interesting. And so I would say, yeah, it's also Schiller's Die Räuber shows also that emotions, sentiments are very important, but not with the theme on love primarily, but with the theme of this adventurous thing and every.
I see. So it's a variation, but on a different thing. So let us perhaps we're closing to our conclusion. Perhaps we should have a few recommendations for our viewers, Deborah, for things they should go and explore for great German literature. And also, I think we should also have the assertion that Rand describes some of the greatest romantic writers, such as Hugo and Dostoevsky. I would say Goethe and Heine and Schiller and also Caspar David Friedrich. They should also be deserved to be at the top of that list. What do you think?
Absolutely. And Goethe said about Heine that he is a Weltliterat, so he's a world writer. And it's very interesting because Goethe was, I think, the first to coin that term. At the end of his life, he named the word in a letter to some friend, Weltliteratur, world literature. So he knew that German literature has something really big to offer, but unfortunately at that time, only some people could do something with German literature, like Hölderlin, like Novalis, and Heine. That's why he's so important from my point of view for German literature and literature overall. He was the first, as Goethe said, to spread the German literature into the world, because everybody in Europe knew him, read him, and they were amazed about him. So I would say Heinrich Heine, you have absolutely to read Das Deutsche Wintermärchen, for example. It has something.
Do you know the English name so our viewers can?
Isn't it
find it more
the
easily?
Winter Tale? Could it be that?
I'm not sure.
Winter Tale.
I know there's the Book of Lieder, which is
but that's also great.
Yeah, I'm saying another. It's a great collection of his poems. Of course, The Sorrows of Young Werther, I think, is a must for anyone. Yes,
but
Deborah?
also, come on, this
Of
you
course.
also have to Faust, because it's more plotted than Werther. Because, in my opinion, because you have the devil in this plot, incorporated by Mephisto, and so it's more intellectual. Even though Die Leiden des jungen Werther, many people say it's kitsch. Of course, it's kitsch, but it's kitsch on some kind of level, because he shows us a plot which everybody knows, but it is so meaningful. So I would say you can read, even in Die Leiden des jungen Werthers, so much wisdom about him, because it shows us so much about human nature, about values and everything, that it's quite a good kitsch to read.
And it's also very short, and I think it's very easy to read because it's written in letter forms. Each part of the book, each section is a letter, so everything we read essentially is from the perspective of Werther, which I think is a very fun and quick read to do. Yes.
Yes, and as you said, I forgot, Faust is written in rhymes. So
Yes.
for non-German speaking people, it's really hard to understand and to capture the beauty of the language. So I would recommend just learn language, just learn German, for reading this. And I have to apologize for German politics and everything that's happening now around the world. I can understand if you don't want to have anything with Germany and with German language, but I hope that Jonathan Daun and me could show you that German art and literature, there is the beauty.
I second that. I myself am learning Deutsch, and one of the things I told my teacher, I want to learn German. She said, "Why do you want to learn German?" I said, "Because I want to read Faust." That's what I told her. So absolutely go learn German and to read Faust. And another notable thing about Faust, it has a very good sense of humor, I think. I think I love Mephisto. I think he's an excellent character, very funny, and absolutely you should read it. What else is there we should recommend, Deborah?
I'm thinking, what should we recommend? I would say Heinrich Heine, his one of his latest work. He did, unfortunately, when he was very ill. It is called Matratzengruft. He was bed bound after he had a collapse, but during this time he was very productive, and I think he wrote Atta-Troll. It's the name. Why is it so interesting? It's so interesting because he now goes more into this mysticism, into these transcendental things, and it's really nice to read.
Very good. We didn't talk about music, unfortunately, but of course there's a lot of amazing romantic German music.
Richard Wagner.
Natürlich, Herr Wagner und do you count Richard Strauss as a romantic composer?
He has some elements in it, doesn't he?
I think Alpine Symphony, I think, is a great example for that. But yeah, there are a lot of great German composers, as we all know. Okay, so anything else to conclude, Deborah?
What can we conclude?
Perhaps with a call to action to our viewers. That's what I usually do. Yes, go and do X.
Okay, go and do this. I'm just thinking. Go and fall in love.
Fantastic.
Just to have this experience.
Like Werther, but
no. But yes, but not with the end.
Without the end.
So.
Yes. It's a good experience to have, but follow reason. Don't succumb to emotion.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Sehr vielen Dank, Frau Deborah, for having this discussion. I think it's a very important discussion, and I hope our viewers will got a good glimpse for this fantastic world of literature that everybody should experience. That's it. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Thank you.
It was also a pleasure.
Fantastic. And bis nächste Mal, until the next time.